There we go. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, rather, and welcome. It's Valley Beth Shalom Lunch and Learn for a Wednesday afternoon. I want to wish you and yours a very, very happy Thanksgiving holiday. I hope that whatever way you can stay close and still stay safe, you're doing that. That's the important part. It's a very dangerous time to be gathering lots and lots of people around us, but of course, that's what the holiday's about. So use Zoom, use telephone, use television, use FaceTime, however, whatever technologies you can use. I was listening yesterday to NPR, and the wonderful speaker was talking about the fact that the vaccine is coming in just a few months. They've now approved three different versions of the vaccine, and in just a few months, we'll begin vaccinating widely. So this is not the time to get sick. It's like being the last guy in a war. You don't want to be the last casualty of the disease before the vaccine gets spread. So please be very, very careful and enjoy the holiday, but enjoy it safely. So we've been looking at the book of Psalms, of course, and the book of Psalms is the book of religious emotion and imagination. And while my tendency, because it just happens to be my character, is to try to examine the ideas at the heart of each of these um, wonderful poems, the truth is that what we do is to sort of feel what they're trying to get us to feel. Because this is not a book of theology that's carefully consistent. It's rather a book of emotions, it's a book of feelings. Um, and today, what I'd like to do is, and we'll be a little briefer today because I got to get the turkey in the oven, but would like to spend a moment with a psalm of thanksgiving. It's a psalm that's said in the morning service. It's Psalm number 30. It's a psalm that's said in the morning service every morning, just before we begin the public part of the service. It's like the last sort of private prayer we say before we step into the public space of Jewish prayer. Um, and it's an important psalm as because gratitude is an important stance in the world. Gratitude isn't an emotion; it's much deeper than an emotion. It's a stance. It's a way of appropriating and experiencing the world. So let's take a moment and begin with a study of gratitude and thinking about the dynamic that is gratitude. The Bible has a particularly interesting fear, and it's articulated here in the 8th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, this is Deuteronomy, which imagines itself as Moses' last words to his people. So Moses, who has schlepped his people across the desert, taken them to Sinai, experienced the golden calf, experienced the various betrayals across the way, and finally, 40 years after he sets out, he gathers in his people. Now, of course, these are not the people who left Egypt with him; these are their kids, and he gathers them together, and he says to them, "Here are the things you need to know. Here are the last instructions. Here is the ultimate essence of the truth that I have tried to teach your parents and teach you." And this particular sentence, this particular section, he says something quite remarkable. Um, he says, "Take care lest you forget." Now, the idea of forgetting is important because the notion isn't that the notion is that we're not evil, that most people are not terribly evil, that most people are not terribly destructive, whether we're self-destructive or psychopathologically destructive of the society. But we do things because we forget who we are, because we forget what's expected of us, because we lose attention. It's the loss of mindfulness, the loss of attention, the loss of consistency of character. Take care lest you forget. Take care lest you forget the Lord your God and fail to keep his commandments, his rules, and his laws, which I enjoin you today. And what's the problem? Well, the problem is that under certain circumstances, religion becomes terribly important to us. But other circumstances, we tend to put it in the background instead of the foreground. There is a terrible joke that's going around about a guy who's late for an appointment, and he's desperately trying to find a parking place so he can make this appointment. And he's going around and around the block looking for a parking place. And at one point, he raises his eyes toward heaven and he says, "Dear God, I need this appointment. I need this parking place. I will give up anything that's evil. I'll give up pork. I'll give up my selfishness. I'll give up my pagan ways. Please, and I will become your follower. Please, God, help me find a parking place. And just as he finishes the prayer, a car pulls out of a parking place right in front of him. And as he pulls the car in, he says, "Never mind, God, I found one." Now, the dynamic of that joke is kind of sweet because that's what this is. When you've eaten your fill and have built fine houses to live in, and your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold have increased, and everything you own has prospered, beware lest your heart grow haughty and you forget the Lord your God who freed you from the land of Egypt, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness with scorpions and serpents and parched land, and brought you to water from flinty rock, who fed you manna in the wilderness. Beware at that moment when you have earned all the good things of life, beware that you don't forget how you came to this, and that you didn't do it on your own, how you came to this, what the struggle was. And here's the line, verse 17, and you say to yourselves, my own power and the might of my own hand have won this wealth for me. My own power and the might of my own hand has won this wealth for me. What happens? The dynamic of this is, of course, that whatever I'm enjoying, whether I'm enjoying the house or the prosperity of the fields of the world, whatever I'm enjoying, I want to imagine that somehow I earned this, that somehow I deserve this, that it came to me because of my own powers and my own abilities and my own goodness. And that's true under many circumstances. We work hard, we prepared hard, we earned the gifts that life has brought us. But there's always an element of contingency. There's always an element of contingency. And that contingency erases the arrogance of the self-made man, of the man who believes that everything in his life he earned, that everything in his life is deserved, that if only other people would put in what he put in, that they too would have the gifts that he enjoys, that they're just not as diligent and not as careful and not as hardworking and as vigilant as he is. Everything. And I always wondered, the self-made man, what his mother thinks of that. I was in labor for 19 hours with you, self-made man, and I burped you and I carried you, and you remember there was a time, I think it was President Obama was addressing this, and he says, yeah, of course, the entrepreneur deserves the gifts of the rewards of the entrepreneurship that he has carried out, his ingenuity, his innovation, his genius, his perspicacity, his hard work, his tenacity, his stick-to-itiveness. But he went to a public school. And the research that was the basis for the ingenuity that he exhibited, that research was carried out with public assistance, public funds. And he drives to work on a public road, and his kids are educated in public institutions. It's never entirely all mine. It's never entirely all mine, but we want to feel this way. And I think deep down, it goes down to a sort of psychological condition that Sigmund Freud described. It's called infantile egotism. And the infantile ego is the child's idea that when I scream, the whole world comes running. And that the things that are mine, I rule the world, king baby, he called it. And, some of us outgrow that. And some of us grow up the opposite way. Some of us grow up thinking that indeed, I am the center of the universe. It's all me. It's all me. It's all mine. And the question is, how do you induce some kind of humility to recognize that, yeah, you do deserve the rewards of your hard work, your diligence, your ingenuity. But you also owe something to the circle of those around you who gave you life, who nurtured you, who protected you, who educated you. You owe something to the society about you in which you function, which has supported you and prepared the way for your innovation. You owe something to the people of the universe, the people of the world, the universe of humanity about you, who are part of the story of your ingenuity. part of the story of your accomplishment? Yeah, there has to be a balance. And the humility that takes me back from my own good fortune and my own hard work earned me all of this, and helps me recognize that I'm the beneficiary of those who came before me, and I am the recipient of gifts that came before me. That kind of gratitude, the humility and that gratitude, those attitudes, that's the very beginning of any kind of spirituality. That's the beginning of any kind of spirituality. Because until that point, it's all about me. It's all, I am the center of the universe, and I am the only actor in the world, and all of the gifts and rewards of life belong to me. But at that moment, when humility breaks through, and I recognize the circle of those who have sacrificed so that I can have what I have, and that everything that is worthwhile in my life was brought to me by the sacrifice, the self-sacrifice of others, the self-sacrifice of my ancestors who brought me here, the self-sacrifice of my parents who brought me up, the self-sacrifices of those who struggled to create the world in which I function, that everything that I am comes by that self-sacrifice, and that my selfishness is contrary to the very values that gave me the world that I so enjoy. That's the spiritual sermon of Thanksgiving. Thank you very much. Now we can have the turkey. But let's take a look at the psalm, because the psalm tries to do the same thing. And that's where we are next. Oh, that's not the psalm. There's the psalm. Psalm 30. Now, it has a strange introduction. It has a double intro, well, actually a triple introduction. It's Mizmor, a psalm, a song, Shir Chanukat Habayit. Shir Chanukat Habayit means a song for the dedication of the house. And then it says Li David. So there's a lot of scholarship on that, just the title, what it means exactly. Shir Chanukat Habayit means it's a song for the dedication of the house. And the house is typically the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. So is this the song that Solomon sang as part of the dedication of the temple? Is this the song that is sung when the temple is rededicated year to year after its cleansing at Yom Kippur? Is this where this song comes in? No one's quite sure what that means. And then Li David, again, as we've seen before, can mean David. David wrote it. It could also mean it is in the style of King David. It could also mean it is given as tribute to King David. And you'll see that as we read through the psalm, particularly the first stanza, it does have a Davidic sort of flavor to it, because it reflects the experiences of King David. Okay, I shall exalt you, Lord, for you drew me up. You brought me up, and you gave no joy to my enemies. Okay, you drew me up. You lifted me up. Lord, my God, I cried to you and you healed me. You brought me up from Sheol. Sheol is death. Preserve my life from going down to the pit. Sing to the Lord, his faithful, acclaim his holy name. Now remember, King David spent many years of his life on the road, on the run, actually, from Saul, from his predecessor, who was trying to kill him. That plus the fact that he's a warrior. And he understands that his life deals in life and death, that his whole career, his work, his vocation is a vocation of life and death. And the warrior who says, I am not the only one. I am not solely responsible for my own survival in this business. It's because God has favored me. That it's not all because of the power of my own hands or the strategy or my own ingenuity. But I've been blessed here in this. And when I needed to be brought up from death, when I needed to be rescued from impossible situations, there was God. Impossible situations, there was God. And we'll see how this connects now to the rest of the psalm. And now in the second stanza, it begins to describe God. And again, I broke it up this way grammatically so that, lithographically rather, so that you could see the parallelisms, right? He is angry for only a moment, but there's life in his favor. So God is angry for a moment, but God gives a lifetime of grace to those who do the things he needs them to do, to those who favor him. One lies down in the evening weeping and in the morning there are songs of joy. So again, to imagine what it's like to live with such a God, or to acknowledge that the gifts of life, the power to renew, the power to overcome adversity, the power to meet challenges, the power to overcome obstacles, is a gift from not just from within me, but from outside of me. As for me, I thought in my quiet days, never will I stumble. Right? Well, that's the same as we saw in Deuteronomy. I mean, when things were good, I thought nothing bad could happen. But it took me some defeat. It took me disappointment to recognize what it's like to really be human in the world, and the fact that I'm not totally self-absorbed and self-possessed and self-obsessed. Lord, in your pleasure, you made me stand mountain strong. It's a strange phrase in the Hebrew, but that's really the best translation. That's Robert Alter's translation. When you hid your face, I was terrified. So when I was with you, you made me strong like a mountain. When you were angry at me, you hid your face, and I responded with terror. To you, Lord, I call, and to the Master I plead. What profit on my blood in my going down deathward? Will dust acclaim you? Will it tell your truth? So this is his claim. This is his sort of prayer to God, right? What good does it do you to kill me? What good am I to you dead? Right? Protect me. This was my call. Protect me. What good am I to you dead? So what the second stanza reflects are two different experiences. The first stanza is simply the experience of redemption. I was in trouble and you came and redeemed me. It's in the second stanza that we get this very, very interesting, idea that there are two modes. There's the mode of defeat. There's the mode of disappointment, where I feel the absence of God's presence. And that, he said, has taught me a certain humility to recognize that when I'm victorious, it's not entirely my own doing. That there is this deep flow of contingency through the universe that makes it impossible for me to be confident in my own abilities. It's only because I've been blessed from the outside. All right, let's stop for just a second. There's a lot of talking, a lot of big ideas. I want to see if there's any questions from our panel here this afternoon. Stump the panel. Oh, Stanley has a question, and then David has a question.
I have a question on the phrase that says Lord and then Master.
Yeah.
If it's two different entities, when really I suppose that it is one entity.
Yeah, it's not only two different. It's one entity. You're exactly right. It's simply it's a synonym, and he's using different languages to different language. See, here it's in this verse here. He's using different language to emphasize the parallel. Right? To you, O Lord, I call. To my Master, I plead. You see, it's parallel. It's a prime. Okay. And parallelism is the way that the Bible indicates poetry. It's the technique of biblical poetry. You say something in one line, and then you say something that means the same thing, but in different words, the second line. But there's a slight variation between the two. So if you look here, look at the two lines that you mentioned, because they seem so innocuous. To you, Lord, I call, and to my Master I plead. What's the difference between the two?
Well, one of them that I call is, my own doing, and to plead is to ask for something.
Yeah, exactly right. Calling could be for many purposes. Pleading is for one purpose. Calling could be pleading could be a detail of calling, but pleading is a very special kind of. It's a very special act that you do in front of somebody who has power over you. Right? So that's the difference. The same thing, if you look at this one, this is a very important one. God is angry for a moment, but in his favor, there's a lifetime. So anger gives you a moment of disfavor. Favor gives you a lifetime of blessing. Right? That's not a parallel. That's a sort of opposition. That's a sort of opposition. Same thing in the next line. One lies down weeping in the evening, and in the morning is raised up with songs of joy. Okay. And he's talking about what it means to live in the world with a God who is attentive, who is paying attention to you, who is paying attention to you. Same thing in this verse, right? In your pleasure, you made me mountain strong, but when you hid your face, I was terrified. So the second stanza, this whole stanza is about a God who has moments of redemption, giving me help in certain moments, but in certain moments, I haven't earned that redemption. I haven't earned it, and I know that there's a sort of a backing away, a retreat during those moments. David, you got a question?
Well, first, yes. It's interesting on piggybacking on what you were just talking about, the movement from the first line in a stanza, in the pairs of lines you were pointing out. There's movement from the first line to the second line. There's movement from calling to pleading. Right. And each of those that you pointed out.
Right.
And I don't know what you. Well, I'm curious. You spent your life trying to do this. You know a lot about me and my journey. And the only way I know that I move from calling to pleading is through a sense of a certain giving up, a certain pain, a certain surrender. And and the only way I know. Okay, I'll try to go past the sermon and just ask you what you concluded about trying to pass this on to other human beings. What you've concluded.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I mean, so that, we can fill in the question a little bit. So one stance in the world is is the idea that I can handle everything. It's this sort of self-confidence and courage to say, I'm going to deal with. I have enough faith in myself that I can deal with everything, and all of us know that, Mel. I mean, you know that. I mean, we all go into the world and we solve problems all the time, and we have a certain sense of confidence in our problems, and we depend upon that with other people. And I go to see my doctor. I don't want him on his knees praying. I mean, I want him to say, "Oh, I got that. I know, I got that." That's the phrase. I got that. We use that phrase. But there are also moments, when, you, like the first of the 12 steps, and you say, I'm powerless over this. I can't fix this myself. This is beyond my capacity. Mm-hmm. And what I suggested at the beginning is the confidence we have that we can handle life is a beautiful feeling, but it tends to slip into the arrogance of saying that we can deal with everything, and that everything that happens to us is our own of our own authorship, and that we earn all of our good fortune. It's the second stance that says there are moments in life when it's really too hard, and I have to ask for help. And those are really kind of precious moments. First of all, the humility that comes, they're painful sometimes, very painful. But the humility that comes with those moments, those moments teach us something really precious. And what happens at that moment? What happens when you have the humility to say, help me? And sometimes help comes. And it's a remarkable thing. Sometimes help actually comes. David, Doug, right with you. So one of the things that I do a lot is, I take care of people who are bereaved. They've lost a loved one. And particularly men, have this idea that, suck it up, I'll deal with it. And I say to them, no, you need help. You can't deal with this on your own. Cancer patients, I help a lot too. I mean, I discovered it. You can't handle cancer by yourself. It's too scary. You need to enlist a circle of people around you to help you. And they bring you strength, and they bring you resolution, and they bring you ideas. And that's how you get through something like this. And the question is, what does it take to move the arrogant, self-possessed, confident person to the other side, to the guy who's willing to accept help? How do you help a man accept help? The joke that women love to repeat is that we guys will never ask for directions. We'll wander a neighborhood making left turns for hours because we just won't humiliate ourselves to pull into a 7-Eleven and go ask the clerk, how do you find this address? We won't do it. We just don't do it. And that's a character flaw, because sometimes you have to say, I can't handle this. I need help. And I think that's what the psalmist is trying to point out, that it's at that point something quite remarkable happens. First of all, one thing that all of us who have grown through those moments know is that nobody loses respect for you. Nobody loses respect for you because you ask for help. Nobody thinks less of you. Nobody thinks that you're a weakling if you ask for help. That's number one. And number two, you actually become a whole lot more lovable because you're able to say, I don't know, I can't handle this. I need some help. You become much more open and you're much more easy to love than the self-possessed person who thinks he can handle everything. And the person who's able to go through those moments and learn from them understands that I am indebted. And because I'm indebted, I owe something back. Douglas, you're up.
First of all, technology has changed the ability of asking directions. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yes and no. Yeah. The joke is, my wife once screamed at me because I had a navigation system on the car that had a female voice, and my wife said, why do you listen to her and not me? So because she knows where we're going and you don't. And I don't say that because you'll get in trouble.
In my life, I have found that it is much harder to accept help than it is to provide it to somebody else. It's a lot easier to give than it is to receive.
That's very, very wise.
Mhm.
It is very, very wise.
Much more, because the sense of, the loss of dignity, sometimes just the loss of dignity in having to say, I need help, makes it a problem. And when you said gratitude, what I was thinking about is that when you get to the holiness code, Parshat Kedoshim, the first thing they ask about in gratitude, but when they say, what it means to be holy is to revere your parents. And, I guess when I think about that, whatever you think about being self-made, you've started with somebody wiping your tuchus. Everybody starts in life with somebody having to wipe their tuchus.
And ends that way too, by the way, just in case you didn't know, right?
Haven't reached that one yet,
Yeah, it's coming, baby. Let me tell you. So Douglas, let me ask you a question, because you're an attorney, you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
We call you a counselor. Have you ever had a client and no matter and you couldn't get through to the client because you try to say, don't do this or do it this way because I know what this is about? And what do you say to such a client? David's a wonderful teacher. David, have you ever had a student and you said, here's what you need, but the arrogance of the person wouldn't allow them to accept help?
Well, that's easy as a lawyer. You give the advice in writing, you cover your tuchus, and then you bill them for it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I tell you, I explain the risk. If you don't want to listen to me, that's your problem. It's usually going to cost you more money.
Right.
Rabbi,
and so you don't become sympathetic. You have to be objective in terms of giving the advice,
But it's got to be frustrating when you know what the consequences of this choice is going to be, and you can't warn him away from it.
Well, you do. You do warn them. And the interesting thing is, invariably, if they don't, they run up bigger legal bills.
Yeah, right.
And so, I'm not, I give them the right advice, but I'm not sympathetic to anyone who then says, I choose to ignore your advice.
Fair enough. David, what's your experience?
Well, as I'm listening to you, I think a lot about kindness. When I was teaching, I tried to help somebody have the experience of the difference between one approach and another approach. And I asked questions, trying to tell people, we don't like to be told unless we've asked to be told. So I tried to ask questions, and I listened to the answers, and I might say, well, this is what my experience is, or that's that thing that you just said, that's kind of what I'm trying to illuminate for you. But it's so important as I'm listening to you, the idea of compassion and kindness, so that I, as someone who's trying to maybe give, am not arrogant while I'm giving, or not arrogant about my own life or what I know, but just more talk about what I've learned, what I've concluded thus far.
It's like taking direction is very difficult. Bert.
Something Douglas said. To me, the idea of giving advice is sort of an ego boost. It shows I'm strong, whereas taking advice acknowledges a level of weaknesses because I need the advice, or I wouldn't even be asking. So acknowledging a weakness on one hand, and I'm felling in the strength I have because I'm giving advice on the other hand. So it's quite different to the ego of emotions.
Yeah, the psychologists call that countertransference, right? That's when the person looks at me like a father figure and I start to believe it. And it's very dangerous in my business because the moment you start believing that you're God, or that you're somebody, that you're Father Feinstein, and that you're this, the moment you start believing what they think you are, that's one of the most dangerous moments for a clergy person, for a minister or a rabbi. It becomes, go ahead, Bert, finish.
One more comment to get back to today's exterior world. The advice on what to do with the health situation. I don't believe masks. It's an affront. I don't believe it will help. I don't believe it, etc. I think that's a horrible but very profound illustration of giving and receiving advice from people who know and ignoring it because somebody said, nah, fake news, forget it. Look at the consequences as a result.
Right. Well, it was a wonderful thing on NPR yesterday. The fellow who's one of the most important epidemiologists in the country, who's one of the big enemies of the anti-vaccine movement, because he's written books and articles about how vaccines don't give you autism and are not dangerous, but he's become an enemy of, I mean, and we're going to see this soon. There's going to be a huge pushback of people who don't take the vaccine because they don't believe it's necessary or they believe it's dangerous. Stan, you get the next comment, and then David will back to you.
Well, I wanted to go back to your introduction. I'm a big believer of the door by door, appreciation of the, thankfulness for what people have done before me. And I think the next step after thankfulness, though, is appreciation, literally to raise in value what I've received. And that's the way of looking at true gratitude.
Nicely said. And after appreciation comes indebtedness. I have to give back. When I have the capacity to give back, I give back. And that's one of the reasons why I think that the whole process is difficult, because people don't want to feel indebted in that sense. Stevie N.
Hi. I just wanted to say that what I was thinking is that when you're asking for help, when you're the receiver, you have to listen. You don't have to listen when you're giving out the information. And to me, personally, that it's very hard for me to listen and not be thinking about what I want to say next or, my take on it, but to just listen. That's it. That's what I wanted to say.
Very, very important. And there's a whole, I'm trying to sort of trace the steps in the development of what we would call spirituality. So it begins with a certain humility that enables me to say I need help and to be accepting of help. And then the humility that it takes to listen, to really listen and really listen. And then to acknowledge with appreciation what somebody has given me, and not to feel lesser because I've accepted help from outside. And then these are the steps in which you break out of the well-defended self. You break out of the closed self and begin to understand that you're attached, that we're connected, that we're part of one. And that's what this is trying to get to. Let's finish the psalm now, because it's a great psalm and we haven't finished it yet. So the first verse is, the whole meditation on the experience of being redeemed from death. The second is, I think, this meditation on the moments that I feel I have this, the moments I feel confident, and the moments that I feel I don't feel I need help, and what it takes to accept help. And he ends with this plea. He says, when I needed God, I said to God, what good does it do for me to die? What good will that do you? Will dust acclaim you? Will it tell your truth? I think it's a wonderful line. And here is the end. Here's his conclusion. Hear, Lord, and grant me grace. And what is he asking God to hear? He's asking God to hear this plea, right? Grant me grace, love, chesed. Give me love, right? Protect me. Lord, become helper to me. The grace and the helper, those are the parallel terms. And this line, which is a beautiful line, is very important to me personally. Hafachta mispedi lemecholi. You have turned my mourning into dancing. You've turned my mourning into dancing. So I pleaded with you, God. And what did you do? You redeemed me. You turned you took me from the lowest place to the highest place. Mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-G, grief becomes dancing. Undone my sackcloth. That's the garb of the mourner, and wrapped me in joy. That's a beautiful phrase. I'm not wrapped in the cloth of grief. I'm wrapped in the garment of joy. Let my heart hymn you or sing you and not be still. O God, for all time I acclaim you. So when he opens up and he feels this is the strength of God enters him, the wisdom of how to deal with this, the idea that he's not alone, that he's facing whatever difficulties, but he's not alone. Suddenly he realizes that it's not him against the world, but that there's something, he's part of something much bigger than himself. And that's the origin of his thanksgiving. Yeah, Bert, let's finish. Go ahead.
Line 12. What went through my mind as we went through line 12 was my feeling at my mom's shiva. I was in mourning and listening to stories about her, etc. Maybe dancing is a little strong and joy is a little strong, but anyway, that's what went through my mind with line 12, is my emotional reaction at her shiva.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful feeling. Right. For me, it was recovering from cancer. And it was really my wife. She'll tell you that was hers, because we were very afraid. And when the doctor said, we did it, we got it, he'll be okay. There was this sense of coming back from the other side, turning mourning into dancing. There's a sort of resurrection of the spirit at that point, turning mourning into dancing. And that's very important for us. So for everybody, let me wish you a very, very sweet Thanksgiving. Connect with those you love. Okay, everyone, call your kids, call your friends, call everybody. And for all of you, thank you for learning with us today. Sheila, we didn't get to hear your wisdom. Teacher for many, many years. So give our love to your family. Give our love to all of you, all of those you're close to, and have a really, really pleasant Thanksgiving. Take good care, everyone. Stay well.